okay, so when you look at people, and I mean, I talk to a lot of people, different ages, and a lot of them have college debt, tons of it. Like someone came to us last week and he has $650,000 in student debt. And I was just like, whoa, that's just, oh my God. And medical school, right? Takes forever, extremely expensive. And he's responsible, you would think, like he's saving, he's investing, right? He's like planning to buy a home and get a mortgage, but he's just like, this guy is, I don't know what, 27 or something. He's got $650,000 of debt just on that. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, what do you say to people when they are in that position?
Well, it's so interesting because I, of course, at one point in my life, I was $2.1 million in debt, had no idea for the most part until I actually sat down and looked at the numbers and was like, whoa, because you, as you're accumulating debt, you're thinking only usually about the monthly payment. So you're like, oh, I can
What can I afford?
You're not looking at something called the total cost of borrowing, which is what the banks care about. That's their profit center when they can figure out what that total cost of borrowing is. So when I look at this guy, but his earning potential is really high. But when you look at the ratio of income to debt, it's a pretty normal debt ratio, right? So most of us think, oh, $650,000, that's insane. But for, him, it's probably 2 times his income. For, Americans, you're carrying 2 times your income sometimes in consumer debt, also consumer debt, including student loan debt. But what happens is we're sold this idea that, oh, well, student loans are an investment. They're an investment in ourselves, an investment in our education, which is sometimes true if the investment has a return. So in his case, he's probably lucky that he's got a high enough return. So he's going to be okay. But really what we have to look at is, what is the total cost of borrowing on that, like 650,000? So what's the interest rate? How often does it compound? Like, what's going to be the length of this loan? And then we have to contrast that with the investing that he's doing. Is it going to outpace or out earn this debt? Because it has nothing to do with interest rate.
Sure.
Like, oftentimes we'll hear the banks sell you and they'll say, well, don't pay down your mortgage at 5% when you can earn 7% over here. But then you look at fees and you look at compounding and you look at everything else and you're like, they're winning again. They lied again. So
yes.
in this guy's case, right, we really have to look at something called the total cost of borrowing. And all of that is in the fine print, which nobody ever reads, but it always is disclosed. And so once we know those numbers, then we can go, all right, we're going to make sure you're 27. So this $650,000 on a student loan, depending on how it's compounded and depending on how it's set up, and I think I have a guess without knowing him, but I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to be around for 40 years. And it's going to have a low payment, so it's not going to feel like it's a lot. But what's going to happen is he's going to be making payments on it. He's going to feel like that balance is never dwindling. We do have to set up a very aggressive strategy where, yes, he'll do some investing, and yes, we want to take care of the basics and build some wealth. But the biggest earning power he's going to likely have, or the biggest wealth building power, is getting rid of that so that he can allocate the money he would have been throwing towards that debt and now rapidly accumulating wealth and letting compound interest work for him on the wealth building side of things. So we really we treat it like anything else. Like, obviously we want him to make the minimum payments on everything, but we're going to have to squeeze out some extra income that he's earning to pay that off so that he can feel free of it.
Cool. So do you use like a sort of a compound interest calculator spreadsheet to do like the comparisons to show people? Like, I mean, I do that from an investment point of view. I always say to you, like, well, make an extra $1,000 a month and do that. I mean, I always say to people, I canceled my Netflix and I was going for a run with a friend. He said, why did you cancel Netflix? I say, I don't watch it. I think it's a waste of time and it saves me $10,000. And he's like, how's that? How do you figure that out? And I was like, oh, I live at 20 years or whatever it is.
Yes.
And that's how I look at money. I just think, it's a complete waste. I'm not using it, so it compounds. Why don't I use it in the market?
Yes, and you just had such a good point about the Netflix, because the time value of money matters so much too. So if we can do something like, if we sit down with him and we go, well, wait a second, if you open 6 chiropractic clinics and they each earn X amount, like, let's let that pay off the student loan. Like, we can do stuff like that, of course, too. But him just simply carrying it and making the minimum payments on it, it's going to chew up such a huge portion of what his money could be doing in time over the next 40 years.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets tricky, but they know that. That's why they amortize the loans the way they amortize them.
That's how they structure it, right? And then that's why the length of a loan is just like, well, it's more affordable now, right? And I think that's why it gets dangerous, because then, he's 27, I don't know, maybe he wants to get married, buy a house or whatever, right? And then they're going to be like, well, we now have a 40-year mortgage. That's also very affordable with your income, right? And now he's got two things that are like, 80 years of debt essentially. And it's just, I can see it from a business point of view, because I mean, I've worked in a bank, not in the mortgage side, but like more in the investing side, hedge fund strategy and so on. And there is a whole world there where they aim to create products that essentially holy shaft retail. I mean, it's just that. It's just how can we make money with zero risk, right? That's what the goal is here. And through advertising and marketing, it's become so normalized, right? And that's kind of what I think, like, how do you make it not normal to someone to go out shopping, buy something that they can't actually afford because the monthly payments are only, $99 or something like that? Like, how do you change that mindset?